150th birthday phone-in special extravaganza, etc., etc., etc. I've got a busy night ahead for you, so we'll be, I suppose, talking about our Hibs histories or Hibsteries, depending on if you like the wee plays on words. We'll be talking about a win in Dundee, very, 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 very comfortable win against the most boring man in the world's Dundee team. We'll be talking about Grant Hanley signing. Has the other boy signed? Been stuck in traffic for the last hour or so. Is it Chowla? Is that the guy's name? Is he signed yet?
Nah, he's not signed yet.
Not yet. All right, so that might happen while we're on here. We'll keep an eye on that. But a defensive midfielder from Young Boys as well, so we might cover that. And then, of course, we're playing Partizan tomorrow night in the Conference League qualifier. So lots to be getting on with, but I guess it would be remiss not to start with a massive happy birthday to Hibernian Football Club. 150 years old today. Has anybody been down to the grass market today, or the Cowgate, to see the shirts on display and everything? And John, how was it?
I went. My son had got in and had his tickets for 10 o'clock this morning, so the bagpiper was blaring out as the sort of all the VIPs that had been in early sort of walked down. We were up sort of Boyd's Close. Went in. It was only one room that was set up, but it was done really well. So you had one wall was sort of all the history boards taking you through sort of the eras. You had the strips at one end, which you'll have seen all the pictures of. There was pendants and posters. I mean that sort of League Cup 1972 pull out from the evening news that
Yeah.
was up there, and there was I think four or six display units in the middle. I mean that sort of again went through different eras. So you had some cups from the 1878. You had sort of an era around about uh, Gordon Smith's stuff. You had Laurie Riley's boots, winners' medals. I mean, I think it's probably just a wee flavour of what the historical trust have in the background, and hopefully it will transfer really well to the ticket office.
Brilliant. I know Matt from Hibs Retro and McBee, who's sometimes of this parish. I've had loads of great shirts on display as well, which is it looks fantastic. And the Heritage kit came out today as well. Get your thoughts on that there. That seems to have split opinion somewhat since it came out. So let me just pick up a couple of comments on YouTube. So John says, happy birthday, High Bees. Sandy said, happy birthday to the greatest team on the planet. Hibernian FC GGTTH. Ronnie said, hi bangers, how does it feel to be 150? That is about how old I felt after I ran up the stairs, to be fair. Stevie said, evening all, travelling back from a local game that's just been postponed after a double leg break. That sound was horrific. Oh dear, that does not sound good. Green Tea said, thought you were out to dinner with your wife, Other John. Should you be doing other things at the moment, Other John?
If I'm honest, I was standing, and my son's still. I mean, telling my wife, "Oh, there's a woman coming up to John at your dad at the St Mary's thing," and asking him about being Other John. Are you Other John off? I'll be on at 8 o'clock tonight, and I'm like, no, I'm going out for dinner. Sabanka at Upwell Station opened at 5 o'clock, so we were there at 5:05. So it was a lovely meal, great green Thai curry. Would absolutely recommend it to anybody. And then this is perfect timing because there's apparently some soap operas on downstairs, so it works out perfectly.
Tremendous. Do you know how long the display's open for? John McGlynn is asking on the YouTube comments. Was it just today, or is it open for a wee while?
I think my understanding was it was a 1 day only. It was open today, and I think they're transforming the ticket office into the long term home for the historical society stuff.
And Green Tea said St Pat's banner at the church was brilliant as well. Yeah, I mean the St Pat's guys you can rely on to do good stuff. Right, let's get stuck into. I suppose we'll start on Sunday's game. Chris, what did you make of it? A fairly comfortable afternoon for the Hibs.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of agreed it was a walk in the park, really. It was a walk in the afternoon, Sunday sunshine. Dundee offered nothing, like literally nothing. Like I've never seen a team set up to sit in and sit in for 90 minutes. Like it was incredible. And I think taking out of that, the one thing I would probably say we missed as a team is we probably missed the chaos of Lewis Miller bombing forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we had Miller there to bomb forward and just cause that chaos factor, we would have opened them up a lot more and we really would have took goals off them. I think we just, at points, we just allowed them to get into their shape and just kept the ball moving about. And Ahora, for as much as he is good defensively, he just doesn't offer that burst forward. And you could see when he tried to move into the advanced positions, he was a bit lost. So I think that's probably the one thing I'd be like, we were really missing something there.
Do you think that's a position that we'll try and fill? Obviously, we've got Hanley come in, and we'll speak a wee bit about Hanley as we go on. But I agree with you. I think Miller gives us that attacking edge that Ahora doesn't. Probably you benefit from a bit better defensive performance from Ahora than you do from Miller, but we definitely lose something. So, do you think Gray will be looking to fill that role?
Well, I think so. Obviously, I seen yesterday there was sort of small links with a return for Harry Clark, which, if you look at him, I know he's just returning back from injury. He was just back training about 3 weeks ago, but he's the kind of player that absolutely you would score perfect replacement for Lewis Miller. He's got the build, he's got the athleticism, he's good enough on the ball to get in and he would cause that sort of chaos. So I think if there's any truth in that, it's one I really would be pushing for.
I agree. I think he's almost like an identical to Lewis Miller, isn't he? But you know, if anything, we get more experience. It's only really his injuries that's held him back. Stephen, I'll bring you in. What did you think of it on Sunday?
I only caught the second half. I was actually dragged over to Crossgates, Matty, near you, to get a
in the corner
for the wee one. Scariest place I've ever been. No, Crossgates was lovely. Only seen the second half. Tried to follow it as much as I could in the radio. I think it was Brian McLaughlin that was doing the coverage on BBC Scotland, and it pained him to say that Hibs were on top and were comfortably 2-0 ahead. But from what I seen in the second half, they only looked like Dundee only looked like they were ever going to threaten via another mistake from ourselves. Obviously, that's where their goal came from. Other than that, you could tell that was a team that's been put together in the last 4 or 5 weeks from Dundee's point of view, with not a huge amount of quality. And it's probably the most comfortable 2-1 you'll ever see in your life. I don't think, the second half that I watched, I don't think we looked under any pressure whatsoever. And I'd said last Thursday that I would love to have, for us to have been a couple of goals ahead and just be comfortable street, and bar that one mistake, which you can't really blame Ireland for. It's probably one of the first mistakes I can ever remember him making. Yeah. Other than that, very, very comfortable. I'm just gutted that lot got 2 very, very fortunate goals on Monday night to go above us in the league. But yeah, from start to finish, controlled the game, dominated the game, took our chances when they came. Comfortable 2-0 lead at half time. 2-1 lead at half time. And yeah, I think it stands us in good stead going into tomorrow.
And a couple of goals for Kieran Bowie as well. We spent a bit of time talking about him on the episode on Sunday. It's great, isn't it, for a striker at the start of the campaign with a couple of goals?
Absolutely. I actually thought his first goal was fantastic. I didn't quite realise, listening to Brian McLaughlin's superb coverage on the radio, just how fast the ball came at him via that the ricochet off the defender. First touch gets out of his feet brilliantly, and he puts it brilliantly into the far corner. And the second goal, that's intelligent play, being there when that ball drops. Just fantastic. I think you can see, well, Michael Stewart spoke about him very highly in Sports Team on Sunday night. And I think he will be predicted in one of the chats, Matty, that he was going to get 20 plus goals, and he's already 10% there after one game already. So yeah, he's looking, if we can keep him fit, he's looking like a fantastic signing a year after we signed him.
And I'll bring Joe in now. Joe, what did you think on Sunday? Another good performance from your man Dylan Levitt.
I didn't see the game. I just listened to the radio, but by all accounts, Levitt had a terrific game. Bowie is looking like being a Hibs star of the future. Our problem in a year or two will be holding on to him, I guess, because Hibs are a feeder club of good players when all's said and done, unfortunately. But easy result. But how good it was, because by all accounts Dundee were so bad, remains to be seen. Let's see how we do at home against Kilmarnock on Sunday.
What do you think for that game on Sunday, Joe? Obviously, we've got Partizan to deal with tomorrow night. We saw David Gray didn't really change the team. You only Hoylett coming in for McGrath on Sunday. Do you think it's a case of same team Thursday, Sunday again this week?
Obviously, it's an away game. We're going to be under pressure in a hostile environment. Whether he plays the same team or not, goodness knows. But he's certainly going to have to, rather than having his core 12 players or whatever, he's going to have to freshen it up a bit because the Sunday, Thursday job, they can't keep doing it. They need to freshen up the team, Matty.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to see this new £1 million centre forward, for instance.
I think I think they're sort of taking the time embedding him in gently. It's one of these things where you kind of want him to get in and get an early goal and get his Hibs career off to a bit of a flyer, don't you? Like that's everybody's eager to see him, aren't they, Joe?
On the subject of bedding in, it sounds awfully like that they're going to bed in Grant Hanley as well, from what I've seen in the press in the last 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's been training elsewhere. I don't think he's match fit yet, but obviously he wants to get in the Scotland squad for next month. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, we'll come on to Grant Hanley a wee bit. John, I'll get your thoughts on Sunday.
That away strip looks fabulous, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
With the dark green shorts and
Tremendous.
the socks and the sunshine on the telly. Boy, does Bowie fill it out. I mean, I think the bit that I've only seen the highlights and I've listened to the Hibs ones earlier on. The one where he gets a shot away that doesn't give him his third goal in the second half, where the defender's behind him, tries to pin him, and it's like he's getting a calico for Bowie, and he just gets shrugged off. That strength is going to destroy so many defences in this league. I'm not expecting sort of the Celtic and Rangers defences. I mean, Rangers, I think, will be probably beaten by speed round about them. But yeah, Celtic, they'll probably be able to cope with it in terms of that physicality because of what they've got in there. But no, I think he will do damage to lots, and that's what I took out of it. I mean, Dundee are a team. Dundee are showing you why you have to worry about owners over time. They have an owner in there who got transfer fees in last year, used that money to run the club, dumped a fairly decent manager, brought in a complete numpty, has lost the family silver from midfield, and they're going in one direction. I mean, so it's nice to get the away win. Could have been more, but no, everything good on Sunday for the Hibs. And Iredale, okay, maybe there will be clearly a bit of fining going on for losing the goal the way that he did. But the two passes that he put through, the first one out for the cross to Jordan Abita, and the way that he picked out Abita again with the chip through the middle that led to the second goal. So he gets away with it with those two.
Aye, definitely more than made up for it. Ian, I don't know whether you were already in France for Sunday or you had a chance to see the game. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was in France, but I've signed up to Hibs TV overseas, which is a great thing because although it's the first game I've missed, and I really could see that the atmosphere was fabulous with the 3,000 Hibbies, which I obviously missed. But equally, I think it was Colin and John were saying that it was fabulous having Joe Newell commentating. It was utterly brilliant. At one point, the Dundee guy nutmegged Martin Boyle. And Joe immediately started pissing himself laughing. And he said he would wind them up about it. I thought it was fabulous. I mean, Joe Newell, should retire now and just commentate on games because he was hilarious. He started singing and everything. It was great. I'm never comfortable with 2-1. And even quite late on, they got a couple of balls in the box. And as you said, all you need is one mistake. And, it could have gone like last year. But 2 goals looked miraculously easy. And I think we should have been 4 or whatever. But it's a game that probably at the beginning of last season we would have lost. And so I'm very happy with Sunday.
Good. Right, I think there's probably not that much more to talk about for Sunday. It was a sort of fairly routine win. The reason we were doing the podcast tonight was obviously the Hibs' birthday. So we can take a step back for talking about the matches. I wouldn't mind just kind of picking your brains, everybody, and getting your own sort of Hibs stories. So Ian, well, you've got the mic. What was your background? How did you end up a Hibs fan? And
I think I've probably mentioned it a few times, Matty, already, but basically I grew up in the Dummadykes, and so we were near Easter Road. My father was a Heart supporter. My whole dad's side of the family, they're all Jambos. And my mum was a Hibs supporter because she worked in Holyrood Road at Duncan Flockarts, and you know, she joined up for the Second World War, but her dad was a Hibbie. And when they got married, as was normal, they went to live quite close to where my mum's family were from, so St Leonard's. And Gogs, my brother Gogs and me, we were taken to matches from very young. But like a good dad, my father worked at a rubber mill, but he also took us to, like many people did, to Powder Hole as well for the Dugs and for the Speedway at Meadowbank. So it was very much a sort of dad-inspired upbringing. We went to matches from very young, and obviously, like everybody will tell you, you got to lift over then, and so my dad would have just been quite happy to just pass us to somebody else. But the initial players I always remember John McNamee. I remember John Grant, people like that. Eric Stevenson, when I was wee, my favourite. I just loved him. I think Joe is probably going to say the same thing, actually. But Eric Stevenson was a fabulous player to watch. And we had programs. I think my sister gave them all away. We had programs from like Utrecht and Napoli and things like that. So it was obviously early 60s that we started going. But my dad would have got the programs anyway, probably. But my mother was convinced that because Partizan and John Gregg and others had gone to Crossroads Boys Club, that me and Gog should go as well. Of course, the trouble is we were crap. And Eric Gardner was fabulous. He was legendary at Crossroads. I remember talking to John Gregg about him. He's very, very, very affectionately talked about Eric Gardner. And that basically, my brother and I were rubbish at football. In fact, nobody had a ball then, actually. Nobody had a ball. It was only when we moved to Clary that anybody ever had a ball. But basically, we went to all the games. We went to all the home games. And then when I got to about 13 or so, I can't remember when Leeds was. So maybe 13 I started going to the away games. Initially, like everybody else at the time, we went by excursion, the SNT bus from St Andrews Square. Then I started travelling with the Central Branch, Marky Clancy. And then we travelled after that, myself and my big brother and my wee sister, we travelled with the Musselburgh branch. I went down to the Leeds game, I went to the Liverpool game, and of course I grew up, my teenage years were the 72, 73. As I mentioned, I think a few weeks ago, I got lifted at the 6-1 Cup final in 72 on May the 6th. And it's really difficult for folk to imagine that now. There are 106,000 people there at the final. But I'd been at the 68, 69, I think the League Cup final. I think we got beat 6-1 then by Celtic. So I was kind of sick of Celtic, really. That's when they were always the team I wanted to beat. So the highlight of I was thinking about it when I saw what you were wanting to talk about. I mean, obviously I was there for 2016. And it was fabulous because I was there with my daughter, and my daughter and I had watched him get relegated. And then we'd been going and standing in Cowdenbeath in the pissing rain and things like that. So it was fabulous. 2016 was brilliant. But 1972, December the 6th or 9th, whenever it was, when we won the League Cup, that was a massive thing for me. It really was massive because we'd got humped by Celtic in the May. We won the Driver Cup. I won the Driver Cup 5-3 after being 3-0 up. And then we won the Driver Cup the following year. But that first League Cup win, I could not believe it. I couldn't believe that we won the League Cup and beat Celtic. So obviously I was very fortunate to see Turnbull's Tornadoes. I saw them right from the beginning to the end. Like Colin, I actually started playing rugby when I left school. So, I'd always played rugby, but because I was crap at football. And when Hibs started going downhill under Turnbull, when Turnbull started getting rid of players because we didn't win the league, we were second in the league twice, which is incredible to think. But Turnbull deliberately dismantled the team because we didn't win the league, and he expected us to win the league, which I think is fabulous. And so at that time, I had the choice of either carrying on watching Hibs because obviously the rugby time changed to a direct clash when I started playing rugby after left school. So I started playing rugby, and the only time I was at Easter Road was basically midweek games, and if the rugby was called off. And on the internationals, the rugby internationals, we used to get tickets for Murrayfield. And when I wasn't, I travelled as well to play rugby in Ireland and Wales and England. But it was hilarious because when we got our tickets for Murrayfield, I would go up to Princes Street, sell my ticket, and go to Easter Road or go wherever we were. But so I was very fortunate to live through Turnbull's time and to have seen all the build up to that through the 60s. And obviously I went 3 times to watch George Best play and never saw him playing for us. And but basically, when my bairns started to come along, and basically that was the restart. And obviously I moved to the States in '97. I'd been taking my son to the games for about the previous 6 years, in fact, since he was about 3 months old. And then when we came back in 2008, pretty much home and away ever since. So it's been great. It's been absolutely fabulous. But my missions for Hibs are always that we will beat Celtic, we will beat Rangers, and that's my expectation.
Nice one, Rick. That's all we've got time for.
Sorry, mate.
I'm only joking. That's brilliant. That's exactly what I was looking for, Ian. To be fair, brilliant story. Joe, I'm going to ask you the same question as well, because you've got the jump on a few of us for in terms of watching the Hibs. So, how did you find yourself a Hibs fan, and what's been your highlight?
My dad was a Hibs fan all his life, and in fact, when he died 10 years ago, he found in his belongings a season ticket for the enclosure for 1930 when he was 5 years old, 5 shillings. So, I went to my first Hibs game, though, the 15-1 game when we beat Peebles Rovers and Joe Baker scored 9 goals. But speaking of Joe Baker, the best goal I ever saw a Hibs player scoring was 2 months later in the semi-final of the Intercity Spheres Cup, it was called in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And Baker, on the D at the edge of the penalty box, had his back to the goal, flipped the ball over his head, turned around and hit it on the volley in the top corner of the net. Best goal I've ever seen. We drew 2-2 that game, and unfortunately lost the away leg 6-0. So we never got to the final, but it was worth just going just to see that goal. What a marvellous goal. And Hibs had a couple of terrific forwards, but crap defences all in those early years. Joe Baker was sold for 65,000 that year, and Johnny McLeod 40,000. He went to Arsenal. So, being an early High-B fan, great seeing some of these players. And I was at the game when Eric Stevenson, who Ian's just been speaking about, broke his leg. My first away game, late in '61. Hibs. I then used to get the Hibs bus regularly from the Grass Market, but that was my very first Hibs away game. And Eric Stevenson broke his leg, and he was never the same player after that. They were looking on at that time as the next Dennis Law. So remember those days happily. But I agree with Ian, Turnbull's Tornadoes was a great era. And why would centre forward, I don't know, because it was not good. But a lot of happy times going to Easter Road, a lot of happy times. And I went to St Pat's Cubs and Scouts, which was just across the road from St Mary Street Hall, where the celebrations were today, of course. And I remember appearing in Scout events in St Mary Street Hall. So happy days. So that part of Edinburgh was mine. I was born and brought up in Montague Street and came down to Pleasance to the St Pat's Scouts. So, yeah, happy High-B. Happy High-B.
Brilliant. John, same question to you.
My dad came from a Hearts family. My mum was from a Hearts family, but my dad was a bit of a rebel. Didn't really like his older brother. And having been born in 1945, he went through the tragedy, lost his dad in '58 when he was 13. And I think to rebel against his big brother there was a guy called Joe Baker who arrived at Hibs and scored a hat-trick at Tynecastle at one of his first games. And my dad used to go to both grounds. He would lean his bike against the back wall of the east and sort of climb over. So he became a diehard Hibbie. And so I grew up in a family where I was a Hibbie, but there was arguments over whether Willie Bald or Joe Baker was the best. We laughed about 1965. We laughed even harder in 1986 when goal difference and goal average flipped around. My dad was at the 7-0 game with my uncles. We used to go down to his mum's on New Year's Day, and we used to go in every year as a family singing Jingle Bells, the polite version. Know what I mean? So growing up with that, I'm told my first game was in 1970 away at Central Park to Cowdenbeath because we stayed in South Queensferry. So it was up to Dalmeny onto the train, and as a 2-year-old, I was taken over. First Hibs memory I can remember is being absolutely gutted as to why Pat Stanton was leaving in sort of 76 when he was going to Celtic. And I had a hatred for Jackie McNamara for a couple of years because it was his fault. But there again, when you're 8 and 9, you have these things. I got taken to my first New Year's Day game when Hearts got relegated. So I think I got to see the mighty Clyde Bank sitting in the cave on the benches with my wee brother. First game I can properly remember is 5-2 against Dundee at the start of the season. And then I lived through the 80s. I loved Gordon Ray, but if there's ever a decade following the Hibs in recent decades that you wanted to miss, it was the 1980s. I loved Alan Rough. I got told all the stories about Eric Shedler. I mean, when he was still hanging on at the team, and Arthur Duncan, Alan Sneddon coming through. Paul Kane came out, John Collins came through that era, Mickey Weir was starting to come through as a youngster. So you're all the hope that was going to flourish in the 90s. And go away to university. It's only Headache Walk, but actually, if you didn't read the evening news and you're on the beer, I mean, you just lose touch. So my dad was assuring me that Hibs weren't going to go bust. Don't worry about it when you're doing the 10p phone call for the block. So it was a complete nightmare for me when it looks like we were going bust. But 91, me, my brother, and my dad went and got into the cup final. My dad was somebody who always got to the game 45, 50 minutes earlier because he liked to get in, get his programme, get his pie. He liked to get sort of a stanchion to lean on. So we were always there early. So we weren't one of the locked out. And that was the last game that three of us were at together because we lost my dad in 97. And that's the memory that sits. I mean, I can close my eyes and I can see Keith Wright running through. I mean, from the sort of towards the top end of the north enclosure at Hampden, and jumping about, and us going around. The cheers were going around the ground at the end. We're going. I can't see. Has he lifted the cup? I mean, all those sort of things. Those are the things that you're there. I then probably had a couple of decades where work and everything got in the way. But with the opening of the East Stand, my son was 10, and we've been fortunate enough to have a season ticket in there since. Not always felt fortunate, but overall, it's been brilliant.
Aye, it's funny. Hibs shared a video earlier on, like how he sort of a highlight reel, if you like, of the key moments in the history, and they showed Keith Wright's goal in that, and it is probably the first time in ages that I've watched that goal, and I could vividly remember like the temperature and everything, and like the atmosphere at Hampden that day. So Green Tea's mentioned on the on YouTube said always like football. When I started working beside Matthew's aunt, I started going to the games with her and Matthew's uncle, God rest his soul. I would have been at the 91 Cup final with Green Tea, and I think my uncle was there as well. My dad got locked out; he didn't make it in. But watching that clip, I was almost like being back there for the first time in ages, being able to sort of feel the temperature and the atmosphere around the place, and coming back to Easter Road after that as well, like the bus coming back through Edinburgh. What a night it was! Great memories, John. Stephen, what about you? What's your story about Hibs?
Mine's Mine's originates from my dad was a Hibs fan. He's originally from Whitburn, Matty, I think the same as you.
Mhm.
I think his granddad was a Hibs fan. My papa certainly wasn't. But for me, I was always going to support whoever my dad supported. And growing up, my entire life, I've lived in Armadale, which if you're familiar with this area, you'll know is not strong Hibs country at all. Chris is shaking Chris is nodding because he knows the same. So growing up, being fat, ugly, and ginger, I was always a bit. I always struggled anyway, but being a Hibs fan as well just made it double as difficult. In my year at school, there was me and one other Hibs fan, so we would club together. His mum ran the West Lothian supporters bus, which bizarrely only went to home games, which I always found quite strange, although there was the very occasional away game. Chris, you'll remember the Clydebank replay in the Scottish Cup where Nick Colgan said to me that I was mad because for a bet I decided to go in shorts and t-shirt, which I still regret to this day. Capello is one of the worst grounds in the world, but also one of the best. So I think certainly the origin story is my dad. In terms of my Hibs memories, I can very, very distantly remember going to a game in the 97-98 season when we were relegated. My dad had given up his season ticket not long after my sister was born in 1990. So I'm pretty sure we won 1-0. I would need the stats to check the record books, but I'm sure we won 1-0. And I just remember we were in the East Stand because my dad borrowed his friend's season ticket. I'm pretty sure I was pushed under the gate, and I don't think the guy had a son that went. I just remember the East always seen the players coming out the tunnel in the old West Stand before anybody else, so you would feel the atmosphere building. So I always remember being 10 years old and thinking, wow, this is incredible, because I hadn't been to many games at all that I could remember at that point. Of course, that was the season that I really caught the bug, but that season ended with relegation and then winning the cup as well. So it was probably the worst time to start going. But the following season, my dad took me to a lot more games. I remember going down to Stranraer, down to Stair Park earlier in the season where we won 1-0, 2-1, I think, with quite a late goal. I remember going to Wraith Rovers at I think it was the game between Christmas and New Year. We won 5-1, sat in the South Stand for what ended up being the last time for about 25 years until I managed to get a ticket for the 2012 Cup final by sitting in that end. What I would say, Matty, it's an unimaginable amount of lows and shite points over the years, but the best points, the 4 or 5, the Cup final in 2016, the League Cup final in 2007 when I'd not long turned 20 years old, the 3-0 game at Ibrox where Ivan Sproul scored the hat-trick. The highs, I could, exactly what you said there, I can remember little minutiae about the days and what I was wearing, what scarf I had, what trainers I had, all these kind of things. So it's the high points that stick with you. Case in point, Blackie, your man there, he had 5 pies at Kelly at one time at half-time. I'd love to say that he can still maintain that physique as he did then. He certainly can't. But it's the memories that you have, the nights out with your friends, the bus rides through. We used to do wrestling moves in the bus going through Easter Road. Also, as well, I can always fondly remember refusing to put money in the driver's collection, which now I look back on, I'm quietly quite proud of, but also kind of regretting. Nice. It's just, it's in your blood. It's an addiction. It absolutely is. I still get the goosebumps like I did last Thursday at Easter Road. I'm 38 years old now. I've got one kid, I've got one in the way. But those things can still happen. Last Thursday was incredible. That I've never heard noise at Easter Road for such a long time that deafened me the way Rocky Bashiri's goal did last Thursday. And that's 25, 30 plus years after going to my first game nearly. That magic's still there. You still expect it each and every time you go, and it will never ever die. Never ever die.
Amazing. That's exactly what it's like. You get that buzz. I always love coming around the corner and seeing the stadium. Like as you're approaching and climbing the steps to the seats, like it's my happy place. Like I absolutely adore it. That's brilliant, Stephen. Chris, what about you then? Is your story closely connected to Stephen's or not quite?
Yeah, he's still a few of my stories, to be fair. So no, it is like obviously me and Stephen stay in the same town. So there literally is about 10, 12 years that are Hibs supporters through here. So obviously I'd gone to Hibs through their parents, through my dad. My dad come from Edinburgh, so he had an affinity with Hibs, not massive. He wasn't a massive football man, but Hibs were his preferred choice. So I kind of just got involved in that. Like my sisters and that, they went following the glory trail. They went with the rest of the Armadale, and I kind of stuck with my dad's path. Which obviously eventually led me to getting my first season ticket. Weirdly, at the time, my dad was working in a certain club's ticket office in Edinburgh, and he had promised that he would get me a ticket for the derby, the season we got relegated at Easter Road when Kevin Harper and Barry Levetti scored.
Mm-hmm.
Needless to say, failed in that promise. So it was, well, I'll get you a season ticket. So I'd been to a few games and that, and eventually, a year later, he had eventually came through and got me my first season ticket, which obviously led to going on the bus with Stephen for Armadale through Livingston, up Hull Station, all the way through the West Lothian villages to get to the ground. I always remember my first game of that season ticket was I'd went just in a top, and it was Motherwell at home. Duck Lehman scored twice, misty, freezing cold.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're like, but for me getting that season ticket, that was a pure buzz. Like it literally could have been snowing that day. It didn't matter. It was about the buzzy being at the ground, seeing my team, and that was it. Then that was it. And me and Stephen used to go to quite a few games here, there, Ibrox, Aberdeen, and a few trips. Some were called off, and we ended up in the cinema, and different things. So, yeah, that was it for a good few years. Season ticket and enjoying some good times with your friends. As I say, we used to wrestle in the back of the bus. To say it was fun, well, I'm not sure that the rest of the guests on the bus enjoyed it, but we had a good time. And that was it for a few years. And then obviously work starts to take over. So I kind of, I won't say lost touch, but didn't get to as many games as what I used to. So I would just kind of come and go. But obviously within that, there's been highlights and lowlights. Like low times, needless to say, a certain cup final, I never left my bed for 5 days. I phoned in sick to work for 5 days and never left my bed. But maybe 5, 6 years ago, I ended up getting my season ticket back, and taking a new generation along, go along with my brother-in-law, and we take my nephew, my niece, and we kind of do it as a bit of a family, or as I like to think, I'm going with the young team.
Aye.
So no, so we enjoy that, and it's been good. As you say, over the years, and some of the players been lucky enough to watch. Obviously not as many as some of the older gentlemen here, but you get to watch players like Sosie, Latipi, John O'Neill, Gary Smith, and Paul Fennick for me were fantastic players to watch. Different defenders, but both equally effective, and just so many like different characters, different players. I always remember one of my sort of highlights. It was up at Tannadice just after the boys had came back for Trinidad, and John Hughes absolutely ripping the piss out of Paul Loveren all the way through the warm up. It was tremendous. He was absolutely caning him, and you were just like going like. It was just so good to watch. And again, another big character who, again, Hibs through and through. So it was, I think, as Stephen says, it is an addiction. Once you've got that wee bug, that shoe for life. And obviously now I'm starting to kind of pass that on to my wee boy. Trying to get him sort of into the psyche of Hibs and the highs and the lows of football and life.
Brilliant. Passing the baton's it's like a sort of rite of passage, isn't it? Like somebody's done it to us, like kind of taking us to the games, and it's a good thing to pass on to somebody else. Sandy on the YouTube comments, he said, "I've memories of some players who were just prior to the tornadoes and moved on. Marinello, McBride, Steen, the first 100,000 player between Scottish clubs, Cormac, Stevenson, and Davis. John said that his great uncle Tony McGlynn played for Hibs in the 60s Was sold to Dunfermline by Steen because he wouldn't go full time. He says, we've always been a Hibs family due to our Irish roots. Jack said, my dad's memories, Hibs fan was Millennium Derby at Tynecastle and a freezing cold night, Sosie and Kenny Miller scoring. And Stevie says, I remember going to Celtic Park, losing 5-0, and on the coach home, the two lads ran the bus. One stood at one end and one at the other. Big lads ran full pelt and belly smashed each other in the middle of the coach. I never
So,
thought
Matty,
what
about you? Come on, we need your story.
Well, I grew up West Lothian as well, born Livingston, and then moved to Whitburn, and like Stephen and Chris, there's one other boy that I knew that was a Hibs fan, a boy called Darren, and I don't think his mum was a Hibs fan as well. His dad was Celtic, I think, if I remember right. My dad's Hibs, and my cousins and my uncles were all Hibs, so that's who I chose. And I remember I was due to go my first Hibs game, and my dad put his back out. This is when we stayed in Whitburn, and so he couldn't go, he couldn't take me. And I remember being gutted. And his pal, who's a Celtic fan, came through with tickets for Rangers away to Motherwell. We were in the Rangers end. That was my first professional game. Was in the Rangers end at Fir Park. Graham Roberts scored 1-0 to Rangers, and it was just after that my dad took me Easter Road at a 2-2 against Dundee. I just remember loving it. Just having lived away from Edinburgh, and you didn't see Easter Road every day, or you're passing it. So like your first few trips to it are special. It looked huge. Obviously, it was much smaller. Well, when I started going, it's much smaller than it is now. Obviously, if you've been going long enough, you would have seen Easter Road much bigger than it is now. But I just having that magical feeling, and then Green Tea and my aunt and uncle used to take me to the games. My cousin occasionally would take me as well. I just always had the bug for it. I just loved Hibs. There was always like a mystique about them. And when I moved to Edinburgh, it was much easier to kind of go to the games. And then you found myself at Portahay. The roads of Hibs at Portahay, like that side of town. So it was much easier to be a Hibs fan then as well. Worked at Meadowbank, and so could go down to the games quite easily when I was there. Moved to Leith, so I could go to the games easier. And when Josh was born, we sort of got season tickets and have been regular ever since. I think we're probably 20-25 years with a season ticket nearly now. And I started a podcast about it, to talk about it to folk a few years back as well, and that's done all right. So that's kind of my story. I think my first favourite player was probably Steve Archibald. My old man took me to his debut, and I remember just being blown away at how cool this guy was. He was like just elegance personified. Like he just floated about the pitch and a class above. So, and like you say, Chris Sosie and Latape and like players like this that they just stick in the mind. And but I love all like it's like there's no been a Hibs team that's played that I've not fallen in love with. Even the shite ones, there's been one or two there that you just think, I can love them. And then they get relegated and things like that, and you probably didn't love them as much. But at the moment, you do. Anyway, right? Let's move on. Enough of this. We've got.
I'm waiting for a eulogy to Sean O'Hanlon.
A Sean O'Hanlon eulogy. I think not.
Can I just say something? I just say something about everybody in Edinburgh used to go on holidays during the transport night to Fife. And we also had the September weekend. At one time we went to September weekend over at Kinghorn, as we always did, Pecca. And my father said, we'll go and watch Hibs and Dunfermline. And ended up Hibs 6, Dunfermline 5. I always remember that game. It was in the 60s sometime. It just the other thing. Yeah, the other thing is on the 7-0 game. I mean, the 7-0 game, I mentioned it before. Hibs had already just beaten Ayr United 8-1. And I think we drew with Celtic away. And then so the 7-0 game, it was good. It was good fun, but we never actually thought it was anything special at the time. I know we still sing about it, but that's how good Hibs were at the time. The 7-0 game was just we'd be a hard 7-0. But I know we're still singing about it now.
My old man used to always point out whenever it was the 7-0 was on. So he'll always say I was at the game, and you can see on there's two sort of like I don't care if they were disabled cars or cars for disabled people. The cars themselves I think were disabled, but there'd be cars at the side of the pitch. And there's the camera kind of pans round, and you can see my dad and my uncle standing in the and the crowd always points out, because everybody says they were at the 7-0 away. Like every Hibs fan that's of an age will say they were at the 7-0. My dad's at pains to point out that there's like photographic evidence of him being there, so he's got that claim. Right, Thursday, Chris. Tomorrow we've got our first leg back to the football. First leg against Partizan. I have to say I know hee-haw about Partizan. What do you know about them, and how do you think the game's going to go?
Honestly, all I know about them is they're a relatively big name, not as big as their neighbours. Finished 27 points behind their neighbours in the league last season and get parked out of Europe off Larnaca in the last, well, not out of Europe, but out their last qualified by Larnaca in penalties. Other than that, all I know is they're ridiculously young. Like, their squad is like fully 18 and 19-year-old boys. Like, a ridiculously young squad. I think pretty much there's only maybe 3 players over the age of 28 in the squad, something weird like that. Right. But it's all like 18, 19, 20-year-old boys. So I really don't know how they're going to be. I think if I'm just then going to base it on us, I think for us it's how we approach the atmosphere that's going to be in the ground. Because that, like, generally look at these teams, especially Eastern Europe, that sort of area, they're generally good at home, driven on by the atmosphere. And it's like one of the ones, if you remember, which we'll all remember, Athens, like sort of back in Athens when they were burning flags and climbing fences and all that sort of thing. That's the sort of atmosphere the players are kind of going to be facing, and it's how they stand up to that. I think that'll determine how we do over there.
And I think anything other than a defeat's a good result, isn't it? Like if you can bring a draw or even a narrow defeat back to Easter Road, then we're in a decent chance. Stephen, Chris mentioned like the young team there. We played 5-a-sides fairly recently and faced young teams, and it didn't work out well for us. But we obviously know the quality. Hibs, the Hibs will be bothered about that, won't they?
No, and thanks for reminding me of that very painful memory, Matty. Not kicked a ball since, to be quite honest.
I'll never kick him one again.
I don't think I kicked a ball that day, to be honest. Chris is spot on. It's a difficult one to really gauge. You would like to think the professionals at the club have done some form of scouting once we knew it was Partizan that we were facing. Tomorrow is probably very much more a case of managing the occasion and the atmosphere as opposed to necessarily the team. If it's a young team, I certainly don't think they're going to be as strong as Midtjylland are. But that said, what they might lack in terms of actual quality, they make up for in terms of intimidation with the stadium and the atmosphere. What I would say is that I'm led to believe that tickets are €5 tomorrow night. Take note, Scottish football, that's absolutely incredible. If that's what they need to guarantee a crowd of 30,000, then we really need to be taking note and reducing the cost of football across the board over here. To be honest, I can't even get into an Armadale game for less than £8 these days. So I think you're right. If we can come back with a draw or a win, we'll be doing really well. And I think if we can match the atmosphere that it got to at times last Thursday, I would like to think we would have enough quality to get through the tie and make it to the next stage, which, if memory serves right, it's another fairly difficult tie as well. But, you know what, if we make it to the playoff, it's a 50-50 shootout at that point, isn't it? And what a position the club would be in if they were able to then get through the playoff.
Definitely. On the price, I agree. I think it's interesting to note that we sold it at £15 in the last one. I think £15 is a good price for a tie Easter Road. I think the concessions are 12 from membership. I think what Mallman paid for his, it was £12 and £15 for a season ticket holder to get a ticket as well, which you can see how big that crowd was as well. So I think there's a really strong case for it, Stephen. I think you're spot on. John, what are you thinking for tomorrow?
Like everybody, I've not really got a great knowledge of them. I think I'm looking at us. I'm looking for the back room to have got the squad prepared to play in 25, 27 degree heat late at night. I think a lot of it's going to be about preparation. I think the biggest concern I've got with regards to the crowd is more how it intimidates the referees. I mean, my experience over years is that it's referees can be the big influence in these games. And if you get someone who becomes too much of a homer, then it can be taken out your hands. I've got confidence in the team. I've got confidence in the spirit that's there. And we just have to deal with the conditions. I think it's that classic. I mean, it's the classic European idea. Make sure the tie is still on when it comes back to Easter Road.
I agree, Joe. What would you think? Is that the case that the most important thing is not necessarily winning, but making sure we've got something to go for at home?
The team this season get through this tie. The atmosphere and everything was going to be the problem. But I mean, they finished 20 odd points behind Red Star, so they can't be that good. And the fact that they're so young, if we get an early goal, it'll unsettle a young team, I'm sure. So I think Hibs will get through the tie. It's the final one that is going to be the real test, in my view. Or something like that. But we'll see what comes. But first things first, I'm looking forward to. I've already got my ticket for a week on Thursday, so looking forward to that.
Excellent. Hopefully it's another good night now. Ian, for the Michelin tie, you had an insider that gave us a lowdown on the team and put the fear of God on us. I'm hoping you didn't get anybody, any Serbians that are feeding you info, and we can all go into this with some optimism. But are you going to tell me otherwise?
No, I definitely don't. But I did have for Norway, funnily enough. And I had, once I knew I was coming to France, I worked out how to get to Oslo, and it was a lot easier than getting to Belgrade. So I can't go to Belgrade. I can get a flight from Geneva really easily, but unfortunately, my 16-year-old car with an oil leak would not make that at 1 o'clock in the morning, which is what I'd have to do. I agree with you. We're just looking to keep the tie alive. We've got the same approach as with Michelin. We've got to have the same approach there. I think we've really reduced the quality of our defence with getting rid of Lewis Miller. So, that's the first sign that I think we've seen of actually weakening the team. I'd really look forward to having a much stronger squad this year. Of course, we've strengthened across the board, and now we've just chosen to weaken the team by losing Lewis Miller. I'm not saying he would have been ready, but he would have made a big difference, as you said earlier, against Midtjylland. But we just have to keep it alive, as you all said.
And on the way the team's shaping up, Grant Hanley came in, announced yesterday. It was yesterday evening, wasn't it? What were your thoughts on Grant Hanley signing in?
Yeah, you asked me that last week. I don't see a place for him, basically. I think he'll struggle to get in the team. I don't think he's better than what we've got. I think, having Ardale and Ahora, Ekpete and Rocky, and now, obviously, if he's extended to the 5, then, I don't see an obvious place for him. So I think he'll struggle to get in the team. But it's always good having competition for places, as they say. But unfortunately, he's coming in to the area where our squad is currently strongest and is currently performing best. So I don't necessarily see it as a great thing for us.
Okay, Chris, what were you? Where do you see Grant Hanley fitting in the defence?
Do you know what? I think it's a really good signing, personally, on a few different aspects. I don't think he comes in and starts. I think he's an option to play along the back 3 at any point. I think he's a huge upgrade in Ekpete, and I think come AFCON time, when we are going to lose Rocky for a month, or the best part of a month, because the way the groups are set up, his country looked like they could go quite deep into the tournament. I think having Hanley there ready to step in, having worked with the squad for a few months, is a massive bonus, especially over that sort of hectic Christmas period when we always get Aberdeen, Rangers, Celtic, Hearts. Like, we've got to be looking at that, and I think that's where David Gray and Malky Mackay have looked and goes, we can bring him in here, bed him in, he'll be fit and good to go come that time when Rocky's off to the AFCON. So I think it's a massive bonus, and I think one of the things that Kieran Bowie said the other day there, which I think will help Hanley will help Kieran Bowie in terms of Bowie's been learning off of defenders in terms of movement, how to pin, like what they're uncomfortable with. And at the level Grant Hanley's played and the calibre of player he's played against, it's another thing to add into Bowie's game in terms of his learning and development. So we might actually see bigger improvements with Kieran Bowie also. So I think it's a win-win in a lot of aspects.
That's a really good point. I hadn't actually sort of considered that aspect of it, but I think it's spot on. Just conscious of time, Stephen, the Heritage kit came out earlier on. What were your views of that? It sort of divided opinion a wee bit, didn't it?
Yes, it certainly did. I'll start off by saying I like the kit, but I don't love it. There's certain bits about it that I predicted. I certainly thought it would be an all-white kit, or certainly white with the the white-out Joma logo. I think they've missed a trick not making the badge either dark green or just the outline of the badge, a bit like them of the other side of the city did last season. The neck or the collar, whatever you call it, is awful. It is absolutely horrendous. It doesn't look retro. It doesn't look befitting to the shirts as they would have been at the time, presumably just a round neck with a button. That collar on any of the other three kits completely destroys those kits as well. That said, I'm going to be anxiously on about 4 or 5 devices on Friday to try and buy one. And if I manage to get one, it will be framed. It will never, ever be worn. I don't really want to take my custom to the dark web and Thai websites and things like that, but I'll do it if I have to. But I think the best way to describe it, Matty, is a wee bit underwhelming. People to be really blunt. But I don't hate it, but it's not quite the is that it? Was more a reaction of is that it? More than anything.
Would it have improved your opinion if they offered the belt with it, like the original one seemed to have?
Well, like a WWE style belt with.
It was like a wee sort of like a wee bootstrap sort of brown belt. That's what you see the picture. So.
Yeah, it's certainly. I mean, certainly, if we get invited to any more 5-a-side tournaments, that's maybe the outfit we could go with. the average age of the squad. So, yeah, it could have been better. I think is the best way to describe it.
Aye, John, they're only releasing 1,875 of them. That also was something that kind of drew a bit of criticism. But is it a clever marketing ploy by the club, or is it stupid because they're depriving themselves of much needed revenue?
It's fabulously naive. The simple answer is that Joma do have a factory in Spain, but I would suspect that this was shipped out to China to be made. And if they have shipped out the plans, the cuts, the stitching patterns, and everything for that to a company in China, that will simply be passed to another company in China who will make an identical kit with exactly the same stitch patterns and exactly the same material, exactly the same cut. I mean, so the simple idea of making 1,875, putting a number on it, there's a bit of the exclusiveness that the club trying to add to things that I think is misplaced. I mean, the fact that there's a limited number of people at dinner tonight at the club, I've got no issues with. I mean, I'm quite happy that there's events that people go to, but you're selling a strip to fans and you're turning around and saying, yeah, 13,000 of you might have gone and bought a season ticket, but actually, we're not even letting 20% of you get a strip. So there's big bits of it. I mean, we've talked about this in the past. Hibs should be set. This was an opportunity to have a real. This was our first strip. That was a strip that hung on a peg in the Fanatics shop forever. And if we ever put something at the airport, here could be the Hibs' first ever strip. I mean, I think we've missed a bit of a chance there. I've no problem with the updated harp. I think that the idea that represents 150 years of Hibs really, really well. I mean, the harp on the strip in 1875 was a different thing. That represented the Irish community that they were coming from, and it was absolutely right to be there. But I like that. I've seen it in person. I think it looks quite nice. If I'm honest, I haven't seen it up close today, the long sleeve, and I'm glad it's white. But as you probably expected when you asked me the question, there's that idea where didn't make things special and secret and away from fans because they'll just go and buy it off a site for 12 quid.
Aye. Okay, right. We'll wrap up, and that's just to close. Then I'm going to come around each year. And I just want you to give me a name, a Hibs player that you would love to see in today's team. And it could be a Hibs player for your lifetime, one that you wish you'd seen and never got the chance to, or one that you hope to see necessarily in the future. I don't know, but Ian, your player you could put in the team from history.
Alan Gordon.
Alan Gordon. Joe, how about you? Oh, sorry, Joe. Say that again. Sometimes your mic cuts out just as you start speaking. So, yeah,
Smith.
Gordon Smith. Thank you, John.
I think I would probably have loved to seen Arthur Duncan in his prime.
Stephen?
Because it happened fairly young in my life, I'd probably say either Darren Jackson or Pat McGinley to really, really, truly appreciate how good they were.
Jackson was tremendous. Chris?
I was going to go with Pat McGinley, and Stephen's just ruined it. Do you know what? We are desperate. We are desperate for a holding midfielder with a bit of culture. So I'm just going to plump a prime Frank Sozzi right in there.
Nice one. Well, I'll say Gordon Smith as well because my old man maintains he's the best player there's ever been. So I would love the chance to see him as well. Right, happy birthday, Hibs. Hope it's been a good night for everybody watching. Guys, I thoroughly enjoyed your company and your stories tonight. Thanks so much for giving up your time as always. Best of luck to Hibs tomorrow. If you're headed over, please do stay safe and have a great time. We'll probably be back. We might do this again on Friday to review the game. Who knows? If anybody's about, we'll open the lines, and if folk want to join us, then we'll see you all there. But in the meantime, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Yes.